Hi, everyone. This is Kayla Van Zant, your lead faculty coordinator. I did want to share a few things with you this meeting just to review some of the updates and then also just to give some reminders. So first, I wanted to talk about the updated CAP process. So I know in the past when you received CAP emails, the emails used to say specifically, do not reply directly to this email. But actually now they've changed the process and they do want you to reach out to your peer reviewer as that first point of contact. So now you'll see on the new emails that it does say, please reply directly to this email. So they do want you to reach out. And again, if you reply, that gives your peer reviewer all the information from the initial review. So that way they're able to use that to answer any questions or to remember your ratings in the first place. And then also, I would encourage you to review the new email format. So again, lots of things have changed. New areas of the course are being reviewed that hadn't been reviewed by their peer review team before. So I definitely would encourage you to look at new areas, look at any of the details in those areas to see what they're reviewing, what they recommend, best practices, any rubrics or one-sheeters that they attach to the email. Just that way you know you have all the information that you need to perform better next time. Or even if you are getting all meets and exceeds, still just to have those extra resources to help you perform at your best level. And also this will help you, maybe it will answer any questions that you have before you reach out. So I definitely would just review that. Just make yourself familiar with those. Also, instead of emailing Fonzette, you will be emailing your CAP resolutions to me, your LFC, Kayla, and then also copy Fonzette and your LFM coach. So we request that you submit these by Tuesday at midnight, but really best practice would be to submit them as soon as possible. So again, we encourage you to review them on Friday when you get them, just so you know where you stand, if you do or don't need caps, and if you do, so you can review that and see if you have any questions or need to reach out to your peer reviewer over the weekend to get clarification. If you have reached out to your peer reviewer and you still have questions or concerns, definitely reach out to me. You can submit an official dispute that way. Please do this by Monday at noon and include any screenshots. That would be very helpful as well. Moving on to the TSO review. So the TSO expectations have been the same for a while, but the way that they are measuring it is different. So the expectations as of right now are for you to follow the email guidelines exactly. So I've included the different tiers below just as a visual so you can see each of those recommendations, but really there used to be a little bit more flexibility as far as if you wanted to change, like if you wanted to send them a different to-do, or if the student submitted work in between the time that the TSO email came out and when you were documenting and you wanted to send them a kudos instead, there was some flexibility there. But now the way that we're measuring, you really need to be following these exactly. So if, like for example, for tier 3, you will text or call each student on the list, making sure that you're documenting with a to-do or a kudos for each of those. And you're also going to send a to-do to contact academic services specifically. So make sure you do both of those things. Tier 1's the only one where you have an option. You can do kudos for coursework submissions or kudos for improved academics performance. So that one's kind of your choice. But the other ones, you really need to be careful because there's two different action items that you will need to do to outreach to each student. So again, you can go above and beyond the recommended outreach, but just make sure that you are following this as your minimum. If you do get the peer review email and it does indicate that you missed some TSO outreach, just know that your peer reviewer isn't the one that put in that information. That's auto-populated. So your peer reviewer isn't going to be able to tell you which students they are. But if you reach out to me, I do have access to that report and I can look and see which students exactly it's saying. So that way you can go back into Starfish and double check and see on your end if that outreach was provided you can take a snapshot of that or like a screenshot and send that to me, and we can ask for the rating to be changed for that. Or sometimes, we're humans, you may have missed it, and that's okay. So we all are still adjusting to these new expectations. So right now, it is just a soft review, meaning that it's not going to count against your evaluation or go in your file. So now's the perfect time to ask questions, to double check, to really make sure you're fully understanding what is expected and how they're measuring. So that way in the future, when it is being counted, that you will have all M's and E's, hopefully, and we won't have anybody on the list. So again, just please reach out with any questions. I know a lot of this stuff has changed, so I'd be glad to clarify anything or help you double check. I just also wanted to go over a few evaluation reminders. So we haven't talked about evaluations in a while, but I did want to remind you that we do use several reports for the evaluation, including discussion facilitation and assignment feedback, and those do help us fill in those different categories of the evaluation. So specifically for discussion facilitation and assignment feedback, they are percentage based for each of those different categories within those areas. So it's 15% is the threshold, meaning that any category that has 15% or more ends throughout the past year will receive a not met for that whole category. So this information, this data is all feeding from the peer reviews over the last year. So it's going to be using that information to help us compile those ratings. So the threshold actually used to be 10%, but they have adjusted it recently and in the past several months to accommodate for different changes and expectations and in the rubric. So that is something that they understood was a little bit harder to meet since they were changing those expectations, but still definitely something that we are looking at on the back end to see if that needs to be adjusted further. So here's an example of how we would pull it. So in this case, it would be assignment feedback. So I would go to the report and pull this data for a specific instructor for the past year. And so this might be what I would come up with when I pull that data. So this feeds directly into the assignment feedback category in the evaluation. So as you see at the very top on both sides is polish. So from the report, it says 17% is pink, and you'll see pink is N. So 17% N for polish would equal an N or a not meet on the eval. So because it was over that 15% threshold, that's going to be a not meet for that whole category of polish for assignment feedback. But you'll see that praise, timeliness, and structure and syntax, if you look at the report, you can't see in this snapshot, but actually when I hovered over it, it showed that praise was 10%, timeliness was 2% N, and then structure and syntax was 14%, so still under that threshold. So those would all be M's or meets on the evaluation. Now, if there were categories where there was more, so for timeliness, you can see there's more E's than M's. But since there was a small percentage of N's not meeting, then that would still be an M on the evaluation. So I know it does get a little tricky when we talk about numbers and percentages and reports and pulling from peer reviews. So if you do have any questions on that, or if you would like to see examples of the areas in which if you receive an N and you want to look back through some of that peer review data, I'd be glad to help you find that, and we can work through that together. But I did just want to give you those reminders because that is something that we are receiving a lot of questions on. So I just wanted to clarify, and I think that is it for me. So I'll pass it back over to Fonzette.